Illinois researchers are working to save the ornate box turtle. But why? At one time, the small, colorful beauty was living in half of Illinois' 102 counties, but now they've been found in less than 10. On this episode of the Paw Report, we're joined by researcher and veterinarian Dr. Matt Allender, who's been studying the decline of the ornate box turtle for several years. Coming up, he'll explain why he's saving the world one turtle at a time.
Fetcher's Pet Supply on the north side of the Charleston Square, serving the EIU community since 1991. Fetcher's welcomes all pets on a leash, is open 7 days a week, and offers made in the USA food. Pet supplies for dogs, cats, reptiles, and fish. Fetcher's Pet Supply in Charleston.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Paw Report. As you can see, we have stepped out of the studios of WEIU TV in Charleston, and we have traveled to Vermilion County to Forest Glen Nature Preserve for this episode, and we're joined by Dr. Matt Allender from the University of Illinois, the Brookfield Zoo. You've got a title this long, so I'm going to let you tell our viewers about yourself. You're a first-time guest for the Paw Report, so thank you for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a veterinarian at the University of Illinois and at the Brookfield Zoo, as you said. I'm a board-certified zoo and wildlife veterinarian, and part of my duties include doing wildlife work and my passion, which are box turtles. So my job has lots of different components, including teaching and research and doing clinical work.
Excellent. And as I mentioned, we've taken our production outside of the normal setting of a television studio, and we've come here to the beautiful park south of Danville, close to Georgetown, to talk about a rare species of turtle that's really become your passion and your drive and your mission to save the world, actually. How did you come to learn about the decline of the ornate box turtle?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I think more people, especially those of us that are in Illinois, should understand the plight of box turtles. It tells a really interesting story about our state, especially over the course of the last 100 to 150 years. The landscape across Illinois has completely changed. And the species distributions have changed, meaning that there's less species that are associated with prairies because there's fewer prairies around. And the ornate box turtle is one of those species, in that it was historically found throughout the majority of our state because prairies used to occupy 97% of the landscape. And now, as landscapes have been converted into cropland in urban and suburban areas, the areas for box turtles, and specifically ornate box turtles, have started to decline and started to become smaller and smaller. And so I would say over the course of my career, the last 20 years or so, it has been one of the areas of conservation that I've been most in tune to is that species decline due to changing habitats. And then I have a passion for box turtles, and so those things just somewhat lined up, is that there was a need to study the health of box turtles and utilize my experience and knowledge in wellness and the medical aspect of wildlife species for the good of conservation. And so I would say that in undergrad I took herpetology classes that introduced me to the species and the natural history and where they live, and that these are incredibly long-lived species. Ornate box turtles and another species that we have in Illinois, the eastern box turtle, which is more of a forest species, they can live over 100 years. And they tend to live their entire life on a very small area of land, 5 to 10 acres for their entire lifetime. So they become incredibly good sentinels of environmental health and ecosystem health. And that's where I come in, is that I'm utilizing these turtles not just for the conservation of turtles, but to tell us about the environment and the health and the wellness that we all, as humans, utilize and draw our natural resources upon.
So specifically, and you touched on it, we're here today to talk more about the ornate box turtle. Let's kind of delve into the species of the box turtle and tell us a little bit more about it and what makes it unique and its characteristics, and really just what gets you excited about this little beautiful creature.
Yeah, the ornate box turtle is a feisty little turtle. I will tell you that anyone that works with the species, they have a personality, and they're small turtles. They're about 400 grams in Illinois, and the farther you go north, the bigger they get, and the farther you go west, the smaller they get. But 400 grams, that's a little less than a pound, and they are about 4 inches, 5 inches in length. They only are about 1 inch to 1.5 inches tall off the ground. They are relatively fast, and they can really move. Now, you don't think about that as turtles unless you're thinking about the old story about the turtle and the hare.
Mm-hmm.
But they are slow and steady for sure, and they are incredibly colorful. They have oranges and reds and greens and yellows. Their patterns really make them very intricate, and that's where their name comes from. Is the ornate? They're very ornate in their appearance. They're not drab or dull at all. The male box turtles often have green heads, and it's something again to marvel at when you see them. It's pretty impressive, and so the natural history and the characteristics are pretty interesting. In addition to that, is that these guys don't become sexually mature until they're probably 10 to 15 years of age. So conservation and habitat management of turtles is really the long game. Like, you know, where you're thinking about things like amphibians that will breed, reproduce, and create new populations in a single season, in a single year. Box turtles, if we have a baby turtle, that animal can't produce baby turtles for 15 more years. So you have to really do a good job of conserving the habitat around them for a long period of time. It also makes health studies incredibly difficult because we're looking at health over the course of probably several careers. Like I'm starting it, and the students that I'm working with, I'm inspiring passion and enthusiasm, and I'm hoping that they will do the same and continue this work after my career is over, and then inspire the next generation. And then over the course of several generations of researchers and conservationists, we can get to a point where we have achieved true conservation.
You mentioned in that response about, you mentioned health studies and health surveys, and that launches me into the next question. For the last several years, you've been involved in a health survey, health study on these small, beautiful creatures, and it's my understanding it's the longest and the largest running in North America. I know we're talking years, but can you kind of recap and what's involved in that study?
Yeah, this is my life, right? Like, so this is my passion. These are the things, and so stop me if I get too long-winded, because
we've got several minutes here, so you're good.
Well, good, because I could talk for hours or days about box turtles and box turtle health and why the things that we're doing are important and what they are doing. I grew up, I guess, I tend to get off on tangents, which is why one of my students tend to enjoy having class with me, because I'll go off
ramble
on tangents
and stories.
Ramble for sure.
We love stories.
And but I think part of that is I am an educator. Is that my mom is a teacher. I married a teacher. I have 3 aunts that are teachers. So educating and trying to get individuals excited about the stuff that I do, even though I'm a scientist, is one of the ways that I think we can move conservation forward. And so talking about these things are, on an aside, are something that I'm also quite passionate about. But to get back to the science of what we're doing is, to be honest, it's incredibly simple. Is that we are doing the same things to a box turtle that a human doctor would do to us if we're going to the clinic. So we're doing physical exams, and we're looking at eyes and nose and ears. We're looking at the movement of the joints. We're looking at the condition of the bone and the shells. We are then expanding that and looking at blood work. So every turtle gets a blood sample taken, and we're looking at kidney function and liver function. We're looking at anemia, protein, which is an evidence of nutrition and immune response. We look at evidence of parasites and all of these things from a simple, probably 30-minute exam when we pick up one of these turtles. We've also ultrasounded these animals. We get their heart rate with a Doppler machine, and then we take radiographs, and we've done CT scans. We have really characterized nearly every aspect of the health, but utilizing tools that were developed not just for turtles, because many of them weren't developed for turtles, unless we're developing them, but developed for people or for dogs or cats. And so, there's, especially within the last 15 to 16 months, a real keen awareness that the health of the environment is associated with the health of humans, and the health of our society. And with the emergence of COVID, which is likely coming from a wildlife source, these are the things that we've been working on for 15 years, is that pandemics originating from wildlife are not uncommon to us as wildlife veterinarians, because all of the large outbreaks that have occurred throughout the last 15 to 20, 30 years have usually arrived in wildlife. And we have a term called zoonotic, meaning transferring from animals to people, and 75% of all emerging diseases in people are zoonotic, meaning they're coming from or having an origin in animals. And 3/4 of those all come from wildlife. So things like SARS-1, that happened 15 years ago, came from a wildlife source. Things like Ebola, HIV, those are wildlife sources, or they have infections that are very similar in wildlife hosts. So looking at wildlife in our area, whether it be mammals, birds, or reptiles, is incredibly important for understanding what's going on in the ecosystem that we all utilize.
And that's why you're here today. We're actually recording this episode in mid-June, and as I mentioned early in the episode, we're at the Forest Glen Nature Preserve, and here, after we conduct our interview, you and a team of researchers are going to be scouring the woods looking for the eastern box turtle, another species. But back in May of 2021, you and a team that included some four-legged friends, were also on the hunt for the ornate box turtle. Tell us about that day and the use of the dogs and what you discovered during your research then.
Yeah. Well, and so the origin story of the dogs and how they're finding turtles, and it really dates back to 2007 when I was first introduced to them. I was in East Tennessee, and a young veterinarian looking and interested in turtles at that time, and was given a tip by a wildlife resource agency personnel that there was an individual that had dogs that would find turtles. And so I had no idea what I was going to find. I had the whole gamut of expectations of craziness, and it sure was crazy, and it's right in my wheelhouse. But these are Boykin Spaniels, and they are a team, and it's really the 4th generation of Boykin Spaniels that I've been working with now. Amazing individuals that the handler is not a scientist. He owns dogs and loves turtles, and so he and I team up, and the use of the dogs is what's made this the largest and longest running box turtle health study anywhere in North America, is because over the course of the last 15 years, we have caught and examined and done health assessments on over 4,400 turtles.
Wow.
Box turtles. And so those are eastern and ornate box turtles. And they're an incredible tool for conservation, these dogs. They are they're incredibly efficient. When we've done studies to look at how well they can find turtles, is that humans can usually find one turtle for every 2.25 search hours. So when we go out here, it's going to take 2.5 hours to find one turtle. When we bring a team of dogs, they can find a turtle every 0.25 search hours, every 15 minutes on average, and that's over the course of about 5 years. Some days are better than others, but that's 9 times faster. So it's allowed us to do the studies, the epidemiologic studies, like in order to track health and the trends of health. So when we're doing all of our health assessments, we're not just looking for the health of that one individual, is that we're combining the health parameters from all the individuals to know how those health parameters are changing. It's important to us to know if one animal is anemic, but it's more important for us to know if everybody's anemic in that area. Because then what's happening in the environment that's causing these animals to become anemic? Is there decreased food sources? Are there infections or viruses or bacteria that are coming in that are causing these animals to become anemic? Are they undergoing certain trauma? Or are there temperature or climate changes that are causing these animals to have more difficulty maintaining their normal level of red blood cells? So when we're finding, if we were out here searching and I was having to do a 15-year study without dogs, we would have a hard time making those assumptions. And so the other thing that leads into is that by having those dogs and having the number of turtles that we can see, we've identified and found new viruses that have never been detected anywhere else before in the world. And now we can track those viruses, and when we can see 10 or 15 turtles in a day, we can assess that health.
You actually, in that May 2021 research study with the dogs, you actually found some turtles, and that was in Lee County. At one time, turtles were found in about half of Illinois' 102 counties.
Yep.
Now that number has dwindled to less than a dozen.
Yep.
I'm assuming it's all the factors that you had just kind of went through, virus, environment. Is that true?
Yeah, so the main reason is habitat fragmentation and degradation. And so what's happened is that the majority of the habitats that ornate box turtles lived in are now agricultural, urban, or suburban areas. And so even if we were, there's several programs for turtles that are called head starting, is that you take a group of eggs and you hatch them in a lab or in a conservation center and grow them until they're a larger size so that they don't get eaten by raccoons, which are really one of the largest predators of box turtles in our state, and then release them. But those programs are not very successful for ornate box turtles because you're releasing them to areas where there's not enough room for turtles, or the habitat's all gone. And now recently, so if you start to think about it, is that we have a large tract of land, and that we take some for corn and soybeans, we take some for roads, and we take some for houses and urban development. We get into a smaller and smaller area. So that causes two things, right? It causes, one, less turtles to be able to survive, but then the turtles that are left are concentrated into a smaller area. And when they're concentrated into a smaller area, think about it like daycare, where you have lots of kids that have runny noses and various other things. It's a lot more likely that they're going to transmit and interact with other turtles that may have diseases, that if they were spread out, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but now that they're more concentrated, it's likely going to be a problem. And so what we've done in Illinois, but across North America, is that many of these prairie species we've concentrated into smaller areas where they're more susceptible to catastrophic events. Now, as a veterinarian, I spend my time looking at disease and health, but catastrophic event could be a flood. It could be a fire. All of these things could completely wipe out a small population that's just hanging on.
Is Ranovirus, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is that another element to the eliminations of populations?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Ranovirus, and it could be Rana or Rana. It's named after a frog. Most of our tree frogs are in the genera or the genus Rana, and so it was first found in leopard frogs, and back in the 1960s. But it really didn't start to become a problem in North America until the 80s or 90s, when this is a disease that now it's easy for people to kind of associate. But back when I first started studying this 15 years ago, I would compare it to Ebola, because it is a disease that causes massive hemorrhaging of every organ of the body of a turtle or of a frog. It's really pretty depressing. It usually has about a 3-week incubation period from being a healthy animal exposed to the virus and then them being dead. Usually has a 90% mortality rate or greater, and it goes quick. The difference between Ebola and Ranovirus is that Ebola has to be transmitted through direct contact, like secretions and bodily fluids, whereas Ranovirus can be transmitted in water. So an infected turtle can go to a pond to rehydrate and be shedding virus into the water and kill every amphibian or turtle that's in that area.
What are some ways that we can increase the population? You talked about clinically,
Yep.
you can, take eggs and let them hatch and then, let them loose in the wild when they're big enough. Other ways?
Yeah, I think, this is where conservation and is difficult because the solutions to these are complex. And so it's difficult to convey the complexity in a way that engages the general public. But that's what we're doing, and that's what we're trying to do. And so I don't think there's any wrong solutions to conservation, but specifically for the turtle, I think there's a couple of different avenues. Is that we need to support conservation groups and conservation research that are out to identify what are the threats currently so that we can triage to the ones that are most important. So things here like at Forest Glen, habitat is not the biggest issue at Forest Glen. It is health and disease. And so we've very much prioritized how are we going to improve and affect the wellness of these animals. But for ornate box turtles, which is really what we're talking about, habitat is the most important. So supporting the transformation of old or unused ag fields back into prairie and having a diverse prairie population and making those areas larger or adding on to the prairie prairie habitats that we have to increase those size is the single most important thing in Illinois that we can do to try to help not just the box turtle, the ornate box turtle, even though that's what I care about the most, but is all of the other wildlife that are supported by prairie species.
Which kind of leads me into my next question is, you've been doing this research for several years now. What's the finish line?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a finish line, or is it something that this just needs to happen?
Yeah, no,
for years to come.
Well, I think, yeah, I could answer that, and I probably will answer that in lots of different ways. Is there are several endpoints, and I'm a very goal-oriented person, and but I tend to set realistic goals, and we've already hit some of our goals. Is that we want to get an understanding of what are the baseline health parameters that are important for determining the wellness of ornate box turtles, and we've largely done this. It's never been done before, and so that was a huge first step. It's thinking back to the early human doctors when they were, before they even would draw blood, they had no idea that blood was going to be helpful in identifying kidney disease or heart disease or you name it. Well, that's what we've now done over the last 15 years, is figure out which one of those parameters helps us to tell whether we have a sick animal or not. As much as I joke that turtles talk to me and tell me that what's wrong with them, they clearly do not. And so that's even harder, right? Is that we're trying to save an organism, a species that can't describe what are the things that bother them or the things that are affecting them. So I would say that the end goal is clearly the conservation of stable populations of ornate box turtles and eastern box turtles in the state of Illinois. But there's lots of obstacles to get us to that point. And so we are carving out the things that we can do, looking at wellness, in order to best accomplish that goal.
Well, Dr. Matt Allender, who is saving the ornate box turtle, one turtle at a time, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today, learning a little bit about your research, the students that are working with you, and the mission that's ahead, which sounds like for years to come, which is very viable for our environment. So thank you for spending a few moments today with me and our viewers of the Paw Report.
Well, I very much appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Great. And we'll be back next time in studio for the Paw Report. Thanks for joining us. If you're a veterinarian, trainer, groomer, specialist, rescue organization, or shelter that would like to partner with the Paw Report by providing expert guests for the show, please contact us by emailing weiu@weiu.net or call 217-581-5956. If you have a topic you'd like to see on the show or questions for our experts, contact us with those too.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Fetcher's Pet Supply on the north side of the Charleston Square, serving the EIU community since 1991. Fetcher's welcomes all pets on a leash, is open 7 days a week, and offers made in the USA food. Pet supplies for dogs, cats, reptiles, and fish. Fetcher's Pet Supply in Charleston.